Hi everybody, Adrian Plass here.
Yes, and Bridget, hello.
And welcome to the 212th Sounding of the Shadows. We're very pleased this week because we were talking last time about what is the base note of what we believe and the way we approach life. Obviously from our point of view, from the perspective of being in the Christian church. And there's quite a response to that from people. It's been very interesting to see what people say about that. Obviously, there are some similarities, but they're very grateful when people take the trouble to sometimes write quite a lot about what's been said. And we'll start with someone who talks about love a lot, and that's fairly common, I think, in what people have said.
Well, I think it is. I think for most people, love, whatever that means to them, is the base note. Whether they feel a genuine love, if you like, for God, or they are able to accept a genuine love from God for them, or what it means within their own lives. And certainly, one person has talked about his wife.
Yeah.
And how that is the base note, the relationship with her and everything that she's meant to him over 40 years. And somebody else has talked about a particular word. In fact, that came up twice, didn't it?
Well, it was. I don't think we'd ever heard the word. Maybe, I don't know whether we should have done.
No.
But this person said, in answer to your question, I think for me the significant thing is the wonderful love of God, as expressed by Jesus, and also to some extent in the Old Testament. And she says, I remember learning about the Hebrew word, I'm not sure how you say this, but it's Hesed. Is it Hesed? I'm not sure. That's used in the Old Testament to describe the love of God, and is translated as loving kindness or steadfast love.
Yes, and somebody else mentioned the same thing, and that's what's made me so interested in it, to have two completely different people, and this guy says it's the thing that keeps him going is God's. I'm sorry, we don't know how to pronounce it. Let's say Hesed. That'll do.
And he says, I first heard about this years ago on Michael Carr. Michael Carr's a Canadian singer, Christian singer, who we haven't heard about or heard for a long time, but used to be very popular over here. Probably still is. And what does he say? Hesed?
Well, his definition is when the person from whom I have a right to expect nothing gives me everything. Right. That's an overwhelming statement, isn't it? But saying that it means you've got to live it out. It can't just be a head thing. And I suppose that's what we've been when we were exploring the idea of the base note. It can't be just mantras. It can't be plucking things out of the Bible that sound good. You can't just say, the Bible says we should forgive and therefore you forgive. I mean, he's saying that with Hesed, it's learning how to love the way Jesus did, but through small steps of practicing. And he had some lovely examples, didn't he?
Yeah, it was good. He was talked about very ordinary situations, and in particular, he was talking about being in the supermarket and encounters he had with people there, where one person was very kind to him in a small but significant way.
Well, just the saying, you go. These things we can all do.
Yeah,
the example. He gave two examples. One was looking out for somebody who is quite fragile, maybe elderly, and saying, I'll take your trolley back for you. Now, obviously, if it's the sort of trolley where you've put £1 into the slot, the people might not be terribly keen.
Right.
But there are other ways, just saying, no, you've only got two things, you go in front of me. I mean, I experience that a lot. People are, on the whole, very kind. And it doesn't cost anything. So in a way, those examples of Hesed, they don't cost much. And actually, when we think of the love of God, it cost.
He said he felt God had given him a lesson in Hesed in the supermarket. And he says we need to respond to the nudges we sometimes get.
And sometimes we don't
and
respond
sometimes we
to them,
don't.
yeah.
No, he says he finishes by saying, "Yet he is willing to keep on with me, and I'm so grateful that he does." And we've heard quite a lot from this person over the last few years, and I know he means that. And it's sometimes nice to hear people saying things with extravagance about the love of God, because there are many mantras, but heartfelt statements are not all that common, are they?
Little things. I mean, we are. We're recording this Thursday night. That's the truth of it, isn't it? By tomorrow morning in the UK, there will be a new government. Probably will be a new government rather than a continuation of the one that we've got. But there's been a lot of talk about how important it is to vote, and very easy to forget that we have a fought for democracy that asks that people will vote. The small thing, it's what they were talking about with the Hesed, these people who've contacted us. And in a way, it's what we talk about when we think, well, our vote isn't going to make any difference, but I suppose I should, because we have the right to vote. And losing a value of that throws away a huge amount of sacrifice that went on to get to the point, especially when women can vote, but all of us can vote, that we can choose. So, but that throws up a lot of other things, doesn't it?
Well, it's very difficult even with the voting to. Someone says, well, your vote really counts, and you think, well, I suppose it does, and maybe I ought to get down there and do my vote. Well, we did vote, in fact.
Yeah.
Because we thought we're very fortunate to have
exactly
the system, the democratic system we have.
But it's hard
so
to believe
did go,
that your vote, I don't mean yours, I mean anyone's individual vote is going to make a huge difference. And I think that's how I felt, but I did it anyway. And I don't know, isn't that what we sometimes feel about things like being told that God hears every prayer, every thought, knows what's going. And I say it to other people, and I believe it most of the time. But then suddenly you think, really? Just like thinking, does it really matter about my vote? Really? Is it really true that every single thought, every single prayer, every single communication with God, that He hears it?
Yeah. Like some vast office with phones going constantly. I don't know. It isn't easy. But
that really is a horrible image.
No, I know.
That really is depressing.
Although I do remember with fondness when we went to the World Vision offices, where, which of course is a charity which organises fostering for children and sponsorship.
Not fostering.
And they had a sponsorship. They had a system whereby every time on the phone someone
sponsored a child
was found that the person on the phone was sponsoring a child, they would ring a bell.
Yes,
and so on. Some days you'd have lots of bells ringing, and it was that must have been wonderful. I wasn't there to hear that, but I loved the idea of a bell every time. Whether that happens in heaven when a prayer goes up, I really don't know.
Nice thought. It's a nice thought, and that in a way. Yes, I mean, I said about the sacrifice involved in creating a democracy, but the sacrifice involved in breaking the barrier so that we can call God Father and we can speak to Him at any time we want to, and that apparently every prayer, every spoken communication is heard.
Yeah.
I think maybe, I don't know what you think, Adrian, I think maybe things got a bit carried away at one point where the assumption was therefore we would get an immediate response. I don't think I would buy into that exactly now.
Well, it isn't true. I mean, it isn't true for me that every time I speak to God I get an immediate response, that's for sure. But I was thinking about this today, and I was thinking how easy it is to forget the fact that there's a very strong emphasis in the teaching of Jesus and subsequent teaching that we are actually His representatives in the answering of prayer. that answering the need in people, the things that they need to know or to hear or to consider. And I was thinking of the things that make you think that. One is, Jesus says, for instance, you will do greater things than I will.
Yes.
And you don't hear that preached about much.
No,
but
no, I'm not really surprised, but...
No, but it's another indication that perhaps our minds don't open enough. The harvest is great, but the workers are few. What is needed is workers who are actually willing to take on the work that is needed.
Yes, and there again, and I know we've talked about it last week and at other times, that does not mean just hanging around doing not a lot and then saying some words and feeling that's the harvest. I mean, the harvest, to get a good harvest, involves work throughout the year, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
And to represent Jesus and be one of the workers doesn't mean that you just turn up at the end like the little red hen and expect that you're going to get a share of the harvest and bring in the sheaves. You know, it's that's why the Hesed thing to me was quite interesting and important, Adrian.
Yeah.
The idea that you look out for opportunities, small and big, to
But do you think there is a fundamental lack of belief in the power that can go with that?
Well, I do.
And
I do think that, really.
People who are believers.
Is that because, I remember you once saying, Adrian, for every real pearl, the devil throws in 1,000 false ones. So
a bucket full of false ones.
A bucket full of false ones. So for every time we see the Holy Spirit at work, we also see so much manufacture of the same that we lose our faith in it, maybe, and we do stop thinking that the power is a real power. Do you think that's...
I'm sure that does happen. Of course it does. Human beings are human beings, and you do lose your oomph, to use a theological expression, and your faith in what is possible through you. But a lot of the reason for that is because one of the great lessons of life for us is that it is true we don't have the power. And as long as we are secretly hoping we might get the power, it's going to go wrong. And I know a lot of things that happen do go wrong because, and we've mentioned this before, people try and push on ahead and have the power to make things happen. When you look at something very simple, like we've spoken about this many times, the widow of Nain, where Jesus sees her. He sees her unhappiness because her son has died, and he's being carried along for his burial or to be put in the tomb, or whatever it is. And it says Jesus' heart went out to her. And it seems to me that that's not a bad headline or major indication for what we're talking about, that it's not enough to have projects and hard work, although they are absolutely crucial. That there is a kind of I don't know how to describe it. If you give your heart out to people, you lose something. Yes, you probably gain something as well, but you're actually letting your heart go out to them. And I can tell you, and everyone else who hears this will know this, on those occasions when someone's heart goes out to you, you can feel it. You can feel that they're inviting you into their world, that they're not talking to you from a distance or from a height. They're saying, I want to be with you in this. And that might be some tiny, tiny thing, some little conversation.
Yeah, I was thinking, as soon as one starts thinking about the heart, the heart, the real human heart, is a muscle, isn't it? And like many muscles, gets stronger if you exercise it. And in a way, that's not so far from thinking that if you get into your heart going out a bit, being aware, whether it is the little things like saying, no, you go first in a queue, or taking somebody's shopping trolley back, being aware, seeing it, seeing a need, and jolly well not being lazy, and jolly well responding to it, then I think it is probably true that your heart gets stronger. Yes, it takes something out at the time, like any exercise can take something out. But I think in the long term, you become more aware. It's easier to do these things, and you gain a confidence that isn't to do with, oh, look at what I'm doing. It's to do with thinking, just seeing it and doing it without thinking, perhaps, really. I don't know what you think about that.
No, I think you do learn. I mean, I think one of the things I've certainly learned is that it's extremely enjoyable to give your heart out to somebody, because they get very generous in what they give back. But I also think I very strongly believe that there are more things available than we can imagine. Jesus' way of approaching everything was to produce the response that was fitted to the person he was speaking to or dealing with. He did not have a set of rules that he thumbed through in order to decide what to do. And I think we should respect man-made rules, and we should also not respect those rules when there is an organic need for something that appears to step outside what you would normally do, or what you did last week. And I know people have heard me say this before, probably fed up with hearing it, but I think there's an opportunity for great things to happen. I mean, Jesus said greater things needed. Not quite sure what that would be, but to reach with your heart to the people who need him, and to be him for them, seems to me the greatest calling that you could possibly have.
But it's easy to lose confidence, isn't it? It's easy to feel, it's all very well, but I can't do that. I struggle to cope with the day, let alone be out there giving my heart, if you like. And somebody who we know quite well, you mentioned Michael Card. Well, she sent us one of the lyrics of one of his songs that I don't remember ever reading.
This was another person mentioning Michael Card.
But I'm going to read it because I know that there will be other people who get so weary with the struggle of being them, let alone the struggles outside being them, that it's very easy to feel, oh, for goodness sake, all this talk about love and giving out your heart and all the rest of it, but I'm just about coping with being alive. And maybe that's what this is about. I promise I will always leave the darkness for the light. I swear by all that's holy, I will not give up the fight. I'll drink down death like water before I ever come again to that dark place where I might make the choice for life to end. Now, I know that's dark, Adrian, but I also know that on various levels, maybe not as deeply low as that, many, many, many people, including us sometimes, get to a point of feeling, I just want to stop for a bit. I'm not sure I want to go out of my way, or not necessarily go out of my... I'm not sure I want to have my eyes open to the need around me when I go shopping in a supermarket or when I do anything, really.
But I think those words from Michael Card, what they say to me is, somebody's saying, obviously, he's saying, I have been tempted to give up. I have been tempted to go to the darkness. I have been tempted to want it all to end. But I promise I will not give in to that final final despair.
Yes, and that is really what the writer of this particular email is also saying, that whether it's through a sense of God's love or through other people who maybe give her a hug or just make her feel okay about herself, that she can keep going. But that means that's back to the responsibility for us, isn't it? The whole popularist thing that we've been hearing from all our politicians, and when we wake up, as we said, it'll be a new government in the UK, then, it doesn't matter what you say, it's what happens. And that comes down to the small things. It comes down to what you do and I do and each individual does. And we do know some lovely people, don't we, who go a lot of extra miles.
Yeah, I've known people who have changed my life with a small moment, a word, genuine care. When you think this person really is speaking to me or really wanting me.
And sometimes that means going on for a long time, doesn't it?
It does indeed.
And caring. So in the middle of all the speeches and all the mantras and all the promises, whether they're going to come true or not, our responsibility is to take the promise of Jesus and the things that he said and have a go, really. And
just remember what we've always said, that there are a million opportunities to be kind.
Yeah.
And the outcome of that kindness is immeasurable. So, yeah.
It'd be lovely to hear about moments of kindness in your lives that have maybe helped, maybe just kept you going. As we often say, despite as well as because.
Yeah.
Or because as well as despite.
As usual, it'd be great to hear from you, and thank you so much to those who've written since last time we spoke to you. And we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.